So, first of all, I'd like to introduce. So, this is Mr. Mark Losby with us. Mark is quite a business savvy person, and so we're so excited to have him on the show today on the podcast. And I'd really like to spend some time asking Mark because he's going to tell all the details. But Mark and his wife, Dr. Sarah Losby, own three separate clinics in South Carolina. And so Mark is, and I'm going to give you credit for being the brains of the business. I know Sarah does all the training and has the chiropractic expertise, but I'm going to give Mark credit for being the brains of the business. So I'd love to ask Mark some questions just about some business details that can help our viewers today. So, first of all, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, this is awesome to have you here. So, I would like to ask you, first of all, just tell us a little bit about your history in meeting Sarah and how did you get into this role?
Yep. Thanks guys for having me and taking the time to listen and hopefully we'll have some more dialogue and conversation at the end. Um, so when I met Sarah in high school, we dated in high school all through college, and neither of us had ever been adjusted. When she went to chiropractic school, she had never been adjusted, and I had never either. So we followed. She just thought chiropractic would be a good profession, take care of people. She was always in healthcare, um, but no understanding of how we all understand chiropractic and the principle. She would think, help people with their aches and pains and make a nice living, and that'd be it. And she went to a Body by God event on campus. That the title alone attracted her to it. That was the only thing. And it was Dr. Ben Lerner, and that was her first exposure to chiropractic and the principle, but more importantly, the injustice in the healthcare system. And she starts telling me, and so I was working in engineering. I went to University of Wisconsin for industrial engineering and was working in manufacturing. So I'm very analytical. And she tells me some of this, and I'm like, there's no way, like there's no, like can't be. And kind of dive into it, read a little bit. I went to a couple workshops with her. I went to a Max Living seminar, and it all just made sense. It was like, why wouldn't you take care of your nervous system? Your nervous system controls your entire body. And then why wouldn't you maintain the structure of the spine, which protects and houses the nervous system? That's just, and I just was hook, line, sinker on the common sense of it. And then there was a fire that lit when you start to tap into the injustice. And I know I'm, preaching to the choir, I know on this line, but I think it's often overlooked the passion behind some of the systems and procedures that we've put in place, where there is a burning passion to rewrite the injustice that's going on around us. And we were like myself included, white hot about chiropractic and getting the message to as many people as possible. So much so I took over the health and wellness division for my company. There was like 300 or so employees where I was working, and they put me in charge of health and wellness. And I was giving chiropractic health talks. I just couldn't refer them to a chiropractor because there wasn't anybody around. And one day my boss was like, "Hey, Mark, you're doing a great job. We like you. You're fun. You're good. You're doing a good job. People listen to you. You should go be a chiropractor." And I almost did. I almost went and became a chiropractor, but there would have been, I had no life sciences. So there would have been 5 years between Sarah's graduation day and my graduation day. And instead decided, you know what, I can do everything in chiropractic. The only thing I won't be able to do is adjust the patient. And from that day forward, me and Sarah decided to partner and take this thing as far as we could together. And it's been my full-time professional endeavor since that would have been 2009. So 15 years ago.
Wow, wow. So tell me, so how did it all start with obviously with Sarah graduating from chiropractic school and you and Sarah opening the practice to where you are now, owning three practices? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I
It,
understand that so Sarah does just training. She does not see patients personally at all. She just trains the associate. So that's a big jump from opening a practice together and Sarah being the
yeah.
chiropractor to now being the training doc for three clinics.
Yeah. And it's actually at four now. We have a fourth that's open.
Great.
Yeah. And so it started just me and Sarah was the chiropractor and I was at the front. And um, the evolution of the whole thing was I realized that Sarah was the bottleneck. Sarah can only see and help as many people as you guys all as chiropractors know. It's like there's a limited amount, no matter how efficient you get, you're limited. So from day one, I was looking for ways to get things off of Sarah's plate. So if she's marking x-rays, teach me how to mark the x-rays, I'll mark the x-rays. If she's doing notes, teach me how to do the notes, I'll do the notes. If she's, calling patients, I'll call the patient. So the more things we could get off of Sarah's plate, the more people she'd be able to help. And that really, then my plate started to fill. So then I started to hire people and said, okay, here's how you mark the x-rays, and now here's how you do the notes, and here's how you make the phone calls, and here's how you. So that was kind of our model there to free Sarah up, and that really helped us grow fast, until she was limited by just her ability to adjust, and that's when we started hiring docs and going that way.
That's so cool. So when came the point where you said, okay, we have exceeded the limitations of our own one clinic?
Yep.
What gave you the indication that yes, it's time to open a new clinic?
Yeah, that's a really good, and it wasn't just one thing, Colin. And I don't know that multiple, because I've gone back and forth with some of our colleagues or our peers where it's like, why do two? Why not just have one mega? And because we're not even open all day. You know what I mean? If the traditional chiropractors, usually in our model, a lot of us are open for 20, 25, maybe 30 patient hours a week. And that's because maintaining the staff and all the meetings and all the trainings and all the stuff that we're doing when we're not technically open. But um, I mean, you could, before going to a second, you could just be open all day every day, and that could be a model. And there are a lot of people who do that and really kind of take it to like having the super clinic. Where we went to, there were two factors for us to decide on a second location. Was one, it's a strength of ours of hiring, training, and developing teams and systems. Like that's a strength of ours. So it's not uncomfortable, because when there's two teams, that's just twice as many people to manage and systems to have in place. And if that's not a strength, I wouldn't probably recommend it, because if it's a weakness, it'll get exposed. And then the second thing is, I really do, like, we have a vision for our city that the chiropractic principle becomes mainstream. And I think the best way for us in our city is to have just more awareness around the city and by multiple locations, even though the patient volume might not necessarily, you could argue which gets a higher volume. But I guarantee we have more awareness around the city, than if it was just one clinic.
Wow. Tell us, if you don't mind, tell us what your training protocol is. And I know this is one thing that we as coaches really talk to a lot of our clients, especially the clients on the line, as far as setting up their
Mhm.
regular training protocols with their team so that the team has a common mission, a common vision, and there are systems in place where everybody knows their role and knows what has to happen in different situations. So how do you set that up in your offices, especially having such a large team? And
Mhm.
what are the metrics as far as training? How do you monitor that and how often do you train?
Yep. We've been doubling down on this, the last really 2 years. And so it's a work in progress, but I could speak to, and I don't want to pretend like we're perfect or nailing it. So we are by no means perfect, but I'll tell you what we're striving for. And I'll even if you share where we struggle. But so we've doubled down on this area, and it starts with the onboarding process, where we've identified for a doc and a CA, um, our pre-hire process. So all the things that are in place before they start. So we have that whole checklist there. And then from day one until our target is 16 weeks, but from day one to however many days that is, 16 weeks, here's the checklist, and we call it foundations. And every CA, no matter if they're a front desk or a back office or a patient care coordinator or whatever CA, their ultimate role, there will be some specific training that comes with that role. But we want every new hire CA to have this foundational training component, and we have built out a curriculum for that. It's not that fancy, but what it does is it holds us accountable and it lets them know where they stand. A lot of people that I talk to, Colin, you can probably echo this. You talk to like a newer team member, and they'll say, well, I'm still in training. Well, you've been on the team for 9 months. You're like, when do we finish this? Like, we have to have this like graduation moment of where you take the tassel across the, whatever those funny hats are. and you're done training. Now we're going to continue training, but like you are onboarded. You have completed foundations, and we have the exact same thing for doctors. We do some video training. We have some, the scripts and everything written out. So it's like, here, read this, watch this video. We'll train on this. All right, check, that one's done. And then that gets us into our ongoing training, where it's nothing outside of what a lot of people do, but we do 2 hours of doctor training every Tuesday morning. Now that's maybe not sustainable that's where me and Sarah have a bit of an advantage, where Sarah's not, this is her main job, so I wouldn't necessarily say you have to go to that level, but the consistency is the important part. So we're doing Tuesday morning training with the docs, and that's what you could probably imagine that to look like. And then Wednesday team trainings is docs separate, teams or non-docs separate. Sometimes we bring them together, but that's it. It's 2 hours on Tuesday, and it's really like 30 to 40 minutes on Wednesday.
I love the fact that you have it's almost set up like a course for new hires to
Yep.
go through and then have graduating from the course. I think that's brilliant. So would you say, and this is one thing that we've talked to a number of clients about, is setting up standard operating procedures in the office or even an office manual. Is that something that you have set up as well?
Working towards it. And I got this from I'm in a business group in Columbia, not chiropractic, but this was, I think, standard operating procedures, I think, is daunting, because what's this? I mean, that's a lot, that's the standard is perfection. So instead, calling it sloppy operating procedures, where we're in the midst of working on it, but say you train your team on handling a Medicare care plan, or whatever it is, and it's like you write it all out and you train on it. Well, what we always did forever, and I'm sure a lot of you guys do, is like that just goes off into oblivion, and it's gone. You know what I mean? Like, get it down and document it and drop it into a Google folder. And that's how you just kind of start documenting your sloppy operating procedures. And then every time you're going back to train on it, so say whatever it is, say you're training on 4 through 6, after DR, how you onboard a new patient. And at least you have a document. Well, the next time, like, might be 3 months later, you train on it again, you at least pull from something and be like, okay, that's not right. Let's scratch that off. But at least you're working off something and you're refining it and making it better. So sloppy operating procedures has helped us to start to document what we say we want to do.
So how do you acquire and hire new team members? Where do you look? And are there certain qualities that you're specifically looking for in new team members before you hire them?
Great question. I am a huge proponent of hiring from within. And our last 3 hires have been through Indeed. But before that, we went 3 years, or I'm making it like we went years without hiring, not from within. And what I mean from within is telling your current team members, like, hey, we're looking to hire. If you have a friend or a family member or a church member or somebody that you'd love to work with, let them know we're hiring. We'd love to. And we've hired from referral for years. And I just feel like it's just so much more efficient. I don't know the last time you guys put an Indeed ad up. You put an Indeed ad up and you get 60 applications in an hour. It's like, and it's just people hitting apply, 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 apply. And then you call them and you're like, hey, this is, Mark from Max Living. And they're like, who? It's like the person you applied for a job from. Like how many jobs did you apply for? So,
Right.
but so I think it's just more efficient. But I mean, then I think a huge thing for hiring that's worked really well for us. I don't know that you necessarily asked this, but getting the buy-in from your other team members. And um, because if I go pick somebody independent from the rest of the team, and I say, this person's a great fit, here you guys go, the team may pick them apart and say that I made a bad decision. Well, if I get the team involved and I say, hey, what did you guys think of that applicant? Did you like that applicant? Can you see working with that applicant? And they're like, yeah, that person seemed awesome. It's like, cool. I thought so too. Let's bring them in. And if they're a part of the selection process, then they're partly responsible for the success of that new hire.
That's funny you say that because that was our filter process with Indeed, and we did hire off Indeed, and we made it mandatory that those people would show up in person to drop off their resume. They could not email in. So that
I
was one
like
of
that.
the,
Yeah, just a little filter.
and the
Yep.
second filter was the team did the first interview.
Love
So
it.
that person had to pass by the team's interview to get to the next interview to us.
Same
So
thing. Yep.
and it worked actually really well. I mean, and luckily we didn't have to do that too often because we had a great team that stuck around for a long time. But that system did work well. So
I like
so
that a
that
lot,
actually
Colin.
brings me to my next question is so, and I'm sure everybody would love to know this. How do you compensate and how do you bonus your team members? Do you have certain metrics for that or certain performance bonuses?
Yep. Um, so we have, I mean, we have three ways that we compensate. So our non-doctor staff is salaried or has all of base salaries with base expectations. And it's a pro and a con where sometimes I'm very thankful we have, excuse me, very thankful that we have four clinics right now because I have four people in the exact same position. So
Mm.
four patient care coordinators, I have four front desk managers, I have four, we call them five essential coordinators, and they're all paid the same. And if one's paid more than the others, we should have a pretty good reason for it, like whether they're performing better on KPIs or they have more responsibilities. So that helps. This sounds horrible, but that helps me have that conversation with the team. Say somebody wants a raise, it kind of insulates me from giving infinite amounts of raises because I have to stay fair to the other people in those positions. And then I can also point to why do you or it never comes down this way, but it's how I sort through it in my head. But why would this person make more than that person when that person's doing more? You know what I mean? So it kind of insulates me a little bit. But that also is a negative because say you have a superstar and you just want to bonus them or give them a raise, if you don't have to consider the other people, it's a little easier that way. So long story short, non-doctor staff is salaried. And then every office has two docs. One's a lead and then one's a team DC. So traditional like clinic owner and associate. But we call it the lead DC and the team DC. Our team DCs are all salaried. And then our lead DCs have a base salary with profit share off the bank statement. Our team DCs have a um, uh, new patient performance bonus that our team DCs get bonused on the new patients that they bring in. Our lead DCs don't because they're being performance bonused off the bank statement. So clinic growth is their interest. And then we don't do a lot of KPI bonusing of non-DC staff. And I'm not firm on that. I like it. It just isn't where we're at with our teams right now. But if anybody, we have done it in the past. I'm being transparent. We don't have bonuses in place right now for our non-doctor staff.
So interesting. So that brings up two questions. So first of all, um, is there a formula that you use to help you determine how many non-DC team members you would need for a clinic? Like, does a clinic have to reach a certain level of collections for you to justify saying, okay, now we can bring in another team member? Or do you pre-frame it by saying we need to bring in another team member to get to the next level of collections? How do you think about that?
Um, so with our team in Columbia, we do more of the latter. So we hire slower because we have a bigger team and a bigger support staff. So we can afford to run a little thinner. If I was an independent clinic growing, um, the advice that I would have for a growing clinic is what we would, if you can forecast authentic growth potential, I would hire ahead. Where I see that misconstrued, and it just is an honest conversation with yourself, is because everybody says they're trying to grow. It's the right thing to say. You know what I mean? And nobody would admit they're not. But to have that honest conversation of looking and, we'll look at the marketing calendar with some of the young docs and be like, all right, well, let's talk about what's January, February, March look like. Why, like, do you actually think you are going to grow? And it's like, we have this, we have this, we have this, we're doing this, we have this, we have this. It's like, oh yeah, you're about to grow. You need to hire. You know what I mean? But if it's a hey, we want to start working towards growing and it's not in place, then I would not hire ahead. But
So what would you say, what's your biggest limitation to growth across all four clinics? Is it lack of new patients, or is it more of a retention issue? What's going to get you to the next level? All the above.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think it comes back to ultimately, it was funny. I was just talking with Sousley about it this week. Kind of just, I think it's a conversation. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but I think the root cause, if you're looking at it chiropractically, so many of the issues with a clinic growing or not growing, we're chasing all the symptoms. I think the root cause is really, really solid chiropractors who are committed and convinced and convicted and can communicate really well with patients. And when you have that rock solid, trustworthy communicator who's not watering it down and leading people, then everything else works. Then it's like, okay, sophisticated systems and repeatable job descriptions. You know what I mean? Like all those things support that like driving chiropractor. And when it's the other way around, it's like it makes the job easier, but it's not this like growing organism. It's just a well-run machine.
Sure.
So for us, we're 100% committed to training and communicating and working with like, if we're going to grow, it's developing strong, committed chiropractors and then putting systems on top of those chiropractors.
Cool. Cool. What and now obviously, I'm in the marketing space now, and we have a marketing company, and that's growing.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, with you, with your 4 clinics, what do you do for marketing, and how is that all working for you?
Yep. Um, Average, we should probably talk. Um, so I we teach what we call the bulletproof practice. And I don't know where we came up with that, if we thought of that or heard it somewhere, but I just think it sounds cool. But we like to teach and we try and live out ourselves clinics that get new patients consistently from 5 categories. So we break it out as external, internal, kids and spouses, dinner, and then online. So external would be screenings, lunch and learns, corporate wellness talks, like going out and getting somebody. Internal would be just your staff having, good conversation, docs, good table talk. Whenever somebody's neighbor comes up, like let's get them in. So that'd be an internal referral. Kids and spouses getting checked. That's after DR traditionally or at PEs, just having that direct conversation. We have a dinner program. We do a dinner once a month at each clinic. And then we do Facebook marketing, social media, Google, all that stuff. So when we say the bulletproof practice, that is a lot, right? But if what we try and strive for is 10 from each avenue, because if you say, 10 kids and spouses getting checked, it's like 2 or 3 a week, like that we should be doing that if we're having authentic, so it's just holding yourself accountable to having direct conversations. Now, does every kid and spouse get checked? No, but we should be talking about it. 10 new patients from a dinner every month. That's pretty sustainable. That's not world class by any means, but it's living. 10 from social is doable. I mean, I'm maybe Colin would tell me I'm lowballing that, but that's not shooting for the moon. It's just like, yeah, we're getting 2 or 3 new patients a week from social. Internal referrals, again, same thing. And then external, if you're getting 10 externally, that means you're going to the big shows. That means you're just signing up for the home show or the state fair or whatever, and then having lunches, or corporate wellness talks. And then the reason we call it bulletproof, if you're just 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, none of those need to be world class. They just need to be, you just need to be engaged with them. Like, and then if one of them drops, say you have a flop of a dinner, you get a huge snowstorm, or what we deal with is hurricanes, and it wrecks your dinner. Well, it doesn't wreck your whole month, and that's why we call it the bulletproof practice. Because if you could go 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, that should be 50. Say you miss one of them, that's 40. You convert more than half of those, that's 25 new patients a month. I mean, you could arguably get to 500 a week on that.
I hope that all of our clients that are listening heard that. That is, and so you call it the bulletproof practice. We used to call it the perfect repeatable week or the perfect repeatable
Yeah.
month. We just put these
Yes.
systems in place month after month after month. So we didn't have to think about it. We didn't have to forecast, or we didn't have to be reactive. If we had a bad month, we say, oh my gosh, we have to have more events next month because our new patient flow is down. We just did it consistently on a regular basis. And that's really, so I love the way that you've phrased that. That's excellent. And then you might have as you mentioned, the big event that comes up quarterly or a couple times a year where it's a big home show or screening or whatever that might be to add in. So that's
Yep.
fantastic.
Yep. Yep.
If I can jump now, just to ask you, do you have any metrics or formulas for expenses? How do you manage expenses? What are your main expenses? And is there a certain ratio for whether it's staffing costs or lease payments or whatnot that you like to
Yep.
keep your expenses under?
Yep. Great question. So again, we have an advantage, but it's also a disadvantage. Our advantage is the four. So I benchmark them against each other. And um, where say, and that's, I think, the importance of being a part of a network or being a part of a group, like you have, Colin, is you can benchmark against each other, and um, so that's how we have metrics for each of them. Our biggest expense is staff salary because again, Sarah isn't seeing, my wife isn't seeing patients and I'm not in a clinic. Those are in the traditional chiropractic model, your two highest producers are the owner, who would be Sarah, and the spouse, who would be me, or however you want to organize that. Um, we have to pay somebody else to perform at a really, really high level. So our staff salaries wouldn't be comparable to a chiropractic office with one or two docs and one of them being the owner. So, but that is our biggest expense because we're, paying for that margin. Um, and then what I think is awesome about chiropractic clinics, even just from a business standpoint, like and I know a lot of you guys, you meet people around town who kind of get to understand your business, or say you have a good friend who gets a good look at it and they're sharp and in business or whatever, and they see the chiropractic business model and it's incredible. We get what we get to do and wake up and do, and, go into shift this afternoon and take care of people. Like, that is such a cool job, first of all. And for our CAs, docs, everything. But then second, from a clinic owner or a business standpoint, the model is amazing. And when I look at expenses, I think you have to have your thumb on them so that they don't kind of spiral. But if you look at the traditional chiropractic, like the single clinic P&L, there's not a lot of spending you can shave. It's pretty standard. And what I do for some people, and I make sure people look at mine, or, Colin, I don't want to speak for you, but like if Colin would look at your guys, you just have to have somebody like, hey, just take a look and make sure nothing's out of whack. And you can pretty quickly, you can look at a P&L and be like, that looks normal to me. Or there might be one or two expenses that, hey, what are you counting in that? But it's really pretty consistent and reproducible across the network, or across the profession. So we just have limits on all of them, and then just make sure they're under, or if it's over, um, you have a reason why.
So what would you recommend? So let's say one of our clients on the line does not keep any stats. They just kind of fly by the seat of their pants. They look at their bank
Mm-hmm.
account at the end of the month.
Mm-hmm.
What stats would you recommend that somebody, a clinic owner, or if they were to delegate it to one of their CAs, keep
Mm-hmm.
regular basis, very simply, to just kind of monitor the progression of growth or sustenance of a chiropractic office?
Yeah. Um, well, I mean, I would 100% advise, getting a bookkeeper to be entering in your expenses into QuickBooks. And then, that's paying a couple $100 a month. Just, you shouldn't be the one hand keying it in. A, you're going to mess it all up, and B, it takes forever. But I would hire a bookkeeper to get all your expenses into QuickBooks, and then you can get a monthly P&L or profit and loss statement that just categorizes everything. And I was on a call yesterday with a younger doc who was not feeling all that confident in his business acumen. And I said, it's just familiarity. Like, you don't have to have a CPA degree. You don't have to have a finance MBA. You just have to get familiar with it. And you can only get familiar with it by looking at it. So I would look at a monthly P&L from your bookkeeper. Um, to just the goal would be you get it. It's a one-page sheet and it says revenue, whatever. And then it's just like, 10 to 15 line items of your rent expense, your payroll expense, your office supplies, your insurance, your whatever. And the goal should be where you could just look at it for 5, 10 minutes and just notice if something is an outlier. That would be a good benchmark to your comfort, where if you see like, whoa, product expense, I thought it was going to be 4 grand, it was 8 grand. Like, why was that? And then you just, spend a couple minutes. It's like, oh yeah, we ordered all that extra stuff for the makeover. It just like, but that level of awareness, I think is what, as a business owner, you should strive for. And then the next level, that's what you pay accountants for, or, like you don't have to have the CPA. You just an overall awareness of the normals. I think it would be the first step.
Mark, this is awesome, and I could continue talking to you about this for a long time. I love the business aspect of chiropractic. I absolutely love it. But to respect your time, what I'd love to do is give our clients on the phone or on the line an opportunity to open up their lines and ask you a few questions in the last few minutes that we have. Would that be okay with you?
100%.
Okay, awesome. So, does anybody have a question for Mark? Okay, I'm going to ask you a question while people are thinking about their question. What's the next step for you and Dr. Sarah? What's the next goal? Like, where you've got 4 clinics now, where does it go from here?
Yep. We want to do a fifth. And what is interesting is, um, hey, Dr. Phil.
Hey, Dr. Mark.
Um,
I call you Dr. Mark.
yeah, it's all good. Doctor or something. um, is it's been a big growth year for us, opening a fourth, because you can only fight so many fires um, physically, because you're limited by like the logistics of it. So it's gotten to the point where we can't be firefighters, and it's really leaning on systems for us and expectations. And we're getting a lot of that ironed out and in place to hopefully be able to continue. So yep, that would be the goal. By the end of it, we have it. I don't think it'll be by the end of next year, but by the end of next year, if there's activity towards it, then that'll be a hit goal.
Fantastic. So I think Dr. Stephen has a question for you. I see a hand raised there.
Yeah. So we just bought a second clinic, and
Nice, congrats.
I just wondered if you had any words of advice for us in getting going. And the second question being, as you're expanding into your fifth and stuff, do you find it, or what have you been doing? Have you been buying existing clinics and transforming them, or do you find it easier to start from scratch?
I'll answer the second one first. I think we haven't bought them. I think that is the way to go, but I can't speak from experience. I'm just looking. I think that's such a great strategy. I think it's such an untapped strategy, to buy existing clinics. Now I'm sure there's growing pains with that, and transfer of leadership and culture and systems and all that. But I love that idea. But we've done them all ground up. And advice for the two, I guess the first thing I would decide is, are you trying to make two clinics one big team, or are you okay with, this is how this group does it and this is how this group does it? And I'm not saying there's a right or a wrong, but I would start with that decision. Do you know how you want to go?
We've been heading the direction of making it one big team. Like we're learning from each other essentially. The other clinic was Max Living Clinic as well too, and was run quite well. And so we're just trying to meld the two great systems and making it one big team. But yeah, that's kind of the
Awesome.
direction.
Yep, that's how and so we call it alignment. I mean, just chiropractic theme, but fighting for alignment, and we just getting the whole team to buy in on the importance of alignment. And there has to be ego that has to be laid down, because this CA does it this way, this CA does it this way. It's not one's right and one's wrong. It's just, we just have to agree we're going to do it the same way for the sake of alignment. So it's just fighting for alignment and a lot of why. But using those two great clinics who all have great ideas to find best practices is the ultimate goal, but it is a lot of so one thing, and I laugh with my team, is if you ever hear somebody say, well, this is how we do it in Lexington, everybody should have like alarms going off. I don't know the cities that you're in, but like one of our clinics is Lexington. And it's like, if you ever hear somebody say, well, in Lexington, we do, it's like, like that should be an alarm. Or an opportunity to, okay, well, hey, maybe we're not doing it the best way. Could you show us? And we're just fighting to get alignment.
Awesome. Great question. Anyone else? Question for Mark? Phil?
Yeah, I've got Colin, you and I were talking a little bit about this last day with the percentages for what your expenses are. And so I'm glad you followed up on that. So first, the question that I should lead with, though, is how many team members per adjustments? I know you were talking a little bit about that, Mark, and whether you're not in a growth phase or not. Do you have a generalization of 2 team members for 150 adjustments, for 200? How do you generally go about that?
Yep. I mean, so I think it's, well, you guys are all experienced. So like a new clinic who's like just opening up, you can go 1 doc, 1 CA up to like 100. And then you go 1 doc, 2 CAs up to, I'd say 250-ish. And that's where you have to have an honest conversation. Like, are you continuing to grow from there? And that would be that third CA. Or, I mean, I know some clinics that are just 1 doc, 2 CAs, 250, and it's super stable and you don't need a third, but that's not, you're going to need a third if you're going to try and grow at that point, in my opinion. And then I think those 3 CAs go for a while. And then at that point, you'd probably start looking for the associate doc. We usually say around 300, 400 a week. Again, depending on, is this you can, I mean, this is just, I would listen to Colin. I admire, I look at Colin as one of my mentors. So I'm like, here I am saying it as I'm looking at your face, but you can correct me if you think different, Colin. But 1 doc can do 300 pretty stably, but it is going to slow that authentic growth potential that we like. It's like, okay, like, is it actually trying to grow? Then you might want to bring in that associate doc. I think around 3, if it's growing, 400, you're probably going to need some help. And again, every clinic's different as far as the amount of like home care integration, 5 essential integration, how much body weighting you're doing, level 2 correction. Like you can, the more complex your system, the quicker you're going to have to bring on more help.
What's your max number of CAs with your 2 doc system that you have or ever had?
Yeah. Well, okay. So again, so when we had just 1 clinic, that was like our super clinic, and it was really, really high volume. Me and Sarah were both there. And I think we were at probably 5 CAs and 3 DCs. And that was when we were at our max before we started, opening others. But right now, the thing is, I have a 6-person operations team that doesn't work in a clinic. Right. So that really lowers the number of CAs in the clinics because, we have a support team that's not in the clinics. So right now, none of our offices have more than 3 CAs.
So that leads into my next question. If I'm allowed to keep going. So your percent, when you're breaking down the P&L, do you have a rough percentage for staff salary and rent, which are the 2 big expenses that you try to keep under for a percentage?
I don't.
Okay.
So, and maybe I just oversimplified things, but rent is rent, like we signed the lease, so there's nothing I can really do about it. And the way to lower the percent is to get more revenue.
For sure.
So, and then where staff salaries trips us up, and I'm not trying to avoid the question, is our lead docs are paid on the bank statement, the profit on the bank statement. So say we have a really good month, our staff salary goes through the roof. So
yeah,
we're not, I don't have a benchmark for it. But I do think you should. It's good at like all the advice that you're getting. I would say it's an important thing. It's just our model doesn't lend itself to tracking it that way.
Great
And
answers.
yeah, and those are great questions, Phil. I really say, and
Yep.
I would say, so Mark, to your point on those thoughts, is that my thinking is that there is no limitation of chiropractic patients, no matter where your practice is. There's no bottleneck. So if you have the proper systems put in place, you put the team in place, you work those systems, and you grow to that certain level. You know, and if you want to see a practice of 1,000 a week, you put the proper systems and the proper team in place, even if you're starting from scratch, and you'll grow to 1,000 a week. And I believe that really to be true anywhere you go. So I feel that the first thing to do is figure out how you want to deliver chiropractic, put the systems and the team in place, and you'll grow to that level rather than try to grow and adapt to the growth by then implementing the system. So it's
Yep.
maybe we're saying the same thing. And that would be kind of that's the way I like to coach people, and that's really the way that we ran our office. So
Yep. I
yeah.
admire that. Wouldn't argue with a word of that. Yep.
That's awesome. This has been fantastic. Steve, you have one more question, and then I think just based on time, we're going to let Mark go because I know he's got a shift this afternoon to get to.
This should be a fairly quick question. Where are your DCs and CAs trained at a main location, or do they train in the clinic they're going to be working in?
Great question, Stephen. Yes. Okay. So we call it all city. We had it this morning. And we have an all city meeting and training, and it's kind of a big camaraderie thing. That's every other Tuesday. And then the other Tuesday is doctor training, and all the docs get together. And then the Wednesday trainings are independent in each office. So the Tuesday is everybody comes together, and then the Wednesday is everybody trains on their own. And when we're at our best, we all train on the same thing on Wednesdays, but I'll be honest, sometimes it sneaks up on us.
Well, this has been amazing. I have to say, Mark, thank you so much. I'm sure we could have a lot more questions just brewing and but we really appreciate your time. I think this has been extremely enlightening for me, and I'm sure enlightening for everybody on the line here. So we truly appreciate that. So I can't thank you enough for coming on today.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm honored you even asked. So thank you.
Okay, folks. Well, yeah, thanks for doing this again. And listen, and I'm happy, as I mentioned on our text messaging, if you'd like, I'm happy to reciprocate. And if I can do anything to help you and Sarah out as far as whether leading a training or doing a group call or something, I'm happy to do that. So please feel free to reach out anytime.
For sure, Carl. Take you up on that.
All right. Well, awesome. Give our best to Sarah, and thanks very much again, and we'll see you very soon.
All right. Take care, guys. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you.